We've still got 2 months to go before Halloween, but I gotta tell ya, I'm in the mood for another Halloween movie. After Zombie's disastrous sequel to his 2007 remake, a third film was rumored, and I've been anticipating it ever since. This is, of course, because I'm a horror movie buff, and I'll take what I can get. I personally wish the Halloween films had never been remade altogether, but now that we're 2 films into a whole new Halloween series, what the hell, let's pile on a few more sequels. Speaking of which, when are we getting a sequel to the 2009 Friday the 13th remake, or the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake? Again, these are films I wish were never remade to begin with, but being a fan of these franchises, if I want to see another film, the remakes are my only option. The more and more I think about these 3 franchises, the more I begin to wonder if the remakes were necessary or not. Naturally, when a classic movie gets remade, I expect it to be awful, and maybe this isn't the right way to look at the situation. So having seen the Halloween remake, the Friday the 13th remake, and the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, plus the original films that came before the remakes, I think it's time I look at both the originals and the remakes, compare and contrast, and for the first time, really give these remakes a fair chance to prove themselves. It's Kev Rocks, the original versus the remake, and today we've got a triple feature for you guys. Let's kick it off with Halloween. The original Halloween is considered to be one of the greatest horror films of all time. I mean, this film was wildly popular. It's a horror classic, so you'd think they shouldn't even be allowed to remake it. But of course, there's no such rule in Hollywood. If you look back to the 1930s, Dracula and Frankenstein are both wildly popular horror films as well, and even those films were remade. So, where do we draw the line between films you can and can't remake in Hollywood? Does this mean at some point they're gonna remake Rocky or The Terminator? Well, that's a discussion for another time. Halloween is simply a perfect movie. There was nothing to be perfected through a remake, not to mention the fact that Michael Myers was still very popular at the time. Shouldn't we have at least waited until everyone forgot about Michael Myers to reintroduce the Halloween series with a remake? This is the kind of attitude I had about the remake, but still, it was a pretty good movie. The remake and the original are both good in their own way, so let's throw down. First, the story. Well, the story from the original and the remake are exactly the same, but in the remake we got to see how Michael Myers grew up and started killing. The first 45 minutes of the remake is like an origin story, and believe me, it's creepy. But I feel like it could have been saved for its own film, maybe a prequel all about Michael's upbringing, because when it all comes down to it, this part of the remake in which we see how Michael grew up really doesn't explain much. At the end of the day, serial killers are sick people. They kill for unexplained reasons. Sure, in the remake we see how Michael came from a dysfunctional family who treated him unfairly, but furthermore, at one point, Michael snapped and just started killing people, and that's all we really needed to know. Which is why in the original, having Michael kill his sister in the opening scene is perfect. It tells us everything we need to know without taking up half the movie to do it. Also, they don't explain too much. There's something creepy about not knowing who Michael Myers is. In the original, he's just a man in a mask who goes around killing people. And in the remake, we're introduced to him at a young age, we see how he grew up, follow his first few killings. It's all too much. Winner, the original. Next up, the killings. In the original, Michael Myers is sneaky and ninja-like with his killings. He's creative. In the remake, it's all about brutality. There's no subtlety whatsoever. When I first saw the remake, I thought to myself, Michael Myers doesn't kill like this. But then I thought, well, he is a murderer, he kills people, so what does it matter what fashion he does it in? Also, the killings in the remake are much scarier because they're so brutal, and that's what often puzzles me when trying to decide which film is better. The original was great, but it doesn't scare me as much, whereas the remake is pretty damn scary, but altogether it's not as good as the original. Still, I gotta give Zombie credit for making Michael Myers scary again. He's not too creative, but these killing scenes are horrific. Winner, the remake. Next, the characters. This should be an easy one. In the original, the characters weren't spectacular, but I did like them. Laurie Strode is a quiet schoolgirl who just didn't seem to fit in. She's smoking cigarettes with two hands, she's too shy to talk to this guy in school, and while her friends are hanging out with their boyfriends on Halloween night, she's stuck babysitting, and seems perfectly fine with it. Now, the Laurie Strode in the remakes is very different. She seems much more social, she jokes around much more, the first time we see her, she's fingering a bagel. I think that says it all. I'm undecided on who played Dr. Loomis better. Donald Pleasance is a great actor and is unforgettable as Dr. Loomis, but I really did enjoy Malcolm McDowell, I think even a little more than Donald Pleasance. But dare I go against the best actor from the original films? I don't know. Comparing Donald Pleasance to Malcolm McDowell feels like comparing Bela Lugosi to Christopher Lee. I don't think I should be doing it. For this one, let's call it a tie. And last but not least, the killer. Michael Myers isn't all that different in the remake, but the guy who plays him is much taller, and the mask is a little different, actually quite different. It no longer resembles William Shatner in any way, shape, or form, and I guess that's fine, because it is a remake after all. Some say Michael Myers shouldn't be so tall. Would it be too simple-minded to say obviously the bigger you are, the more intimidating you are? Maybe so, but honestly I have no issue with Michael being so tall. He wasn't that tall in the original, but again, it's a remake, so there's no continuity to keep up with. Now let's address the way he moves. The original Michael Myers walked pretty slow, but no matter how slow he walked, he always ended up catching up to his victim, which I always thought was pretty cool. But it was kind of unusual. I always thought it would make more sense if this was the result of some type of lower back or leg injury. Either way, it always felt like a slasher movie tradition to have the killer slowly walk after his victim in a chase scene. So naturally, I felt this should carry over into the remake, and for the most part it did. However, in the very last scene, Michael does run at Laurie, and I guess that's okay. It isn't like Michael Myers never had the ability to run, so that's fine. For the most part, Michael Myers is still the same in the remake. No major complaints. Let's call this one a tie. Overall, I really do enjoy both films. The original Halloween is obviously the better of the two, but Rob Zombie's Halloween is one remake that I don't mind. This one, I'm gonna say, is a tie. So that's it for Halloween. Tune in for part 2 where we're going to compare the original Friday the 13th to the 2009 remake. It's Kev Rock's horror movie edition of the original versus the remake. Stay tuned.